In this video, we're going to talk about adding a tool to your tool library. So here we are in Visual Mill. We're going to open the Visual Mill tool library. This is my particular library. And you'll notice here that my naming convention, I use an S at the beginning of the tool name if it's intended to use on the ShopBot, an H if it's for the Haas. I indicate the type of cutter. This is a ball mill. Here's an end mill. Here's a drill. Here's a center drill. Just makes it a little easier to pick out of the list if I indicate the tool cutter type. I indicate the diameter. Here's a 125 thousandths or eighth inch. I indicate if it's a particularly long tool or short tool. For instance, this one is a straight fluted tool, so I just indicate that. Here's an O cut, just so that I have some idea of what the geometry of the tool, if there's something special about it. And then I'll also indicate if there's a specific material. So here's for ShopBot an end mill that's a half an inch specifically for MDF. Here's the same tool, ShopBot end mill half inch for wood. And the difference here, of course, would be the feed rates attached to these different tools. So we'll start with an existing tool, the ShopBot ball mill. I'm going to use the Create Edit Tools. It'll bring that up as a starting point, and then I can start changing this. So let's say this is going to be a ShopBot ball mill, and I'm going to make it 750 thousandths. So it's a 3/4 inch tool, which I don't happen to have, but just for example. And we're going to use it for wood. Notice across the top here are different cutter types. The first one is ball mill, that's what I'm using, but if I want to change this to a flat mill, I can. I can also change it to a center drill or a regular drill, and the rest of these have specialized purposes that you probably won't use in the extent of this class. So we're going to do a end mill, and I'm going to use it for the ShopBot end mill. Again, I'm going to make this 750 thousandths, and we'll make it for wood. This is where we put the holder diameter in. We can just simply type the number here and the holder length. It's important to get these numbers correct, in that if they are correct, Visual Mill can look at it and see if the holder itself is going to hit your work during the process. We also need to know the correct flute length, the total tool length, and the diameter of the tool. So we indicated the diameter is going to be 750 thousandths, so we need to change that in the diameter. And remember, up here is just for our naming convention. This is the one that's critical. Under properties, we can change material. We can have either carbide or high-speed steel. On the Haas, we can be using some high-speed steel or carbide. On the ShopBot, we're always going to be using carbide. The number of flutes indicates how many flutes the tool has. The tool number is primarily used for the Haas mill because it has an indexable tool carriage, so we can assign it a number directly in here. And when we're working with the Haas, those have to be correct or it will look for the wrong tool. The rest of these are really things we won't set. On the Haas mill, we'll also set the coolant type, and we'll need to set that to flood coolant on the Haas. If you don't set this, the machine will not turn the coolant on, so you need to make sure that you put that right when you're doing a Haas cutter. For the ShopBot, you can put it in or not, but there's no coolant on the machine, so it won't affect the tool itself. The comments field is a good place to leave yourself notes. So even though this is for 3/4 inch wood end mill, I may say, for instance, that oak I want to cut at 200 feed rate, but I have found that pine I like to cut at 180. Just as an example, I can leave myself comments there for things that I have found that work better for very specific materials, not just the general category wood. I could also make a separate tool just for oak and one just for pine, and that would handle that as well. But the comments area is where you can leave yourself notes like that. The next is feeds and speeds. If you're using a ShopBot one, the spindle speed is not critical. We'll always set it to 1800 because that's what the tools for the ShopBot are typically run at. But the machine itself cannot be set using the visual mill code. You have to manually adjust the RPMs on the ShopBot. On the Haas, however, this will change what the Haas's settings are. So you need to be careful what you put in here because that's what it'll try to run it at. Remember, 6,000 is the most on the Haas, but something like a 3/4 inch would be run much slower on the Haas machine. Feed rates we'll go ahead and put in. So we would calculate out what we wanted for different feed rates. And plunge is entering the material. Approach is how fast it comes up to the material. Engage is the last little bit before it starts to cut. Then, of course, cutting is your actual cutting calculated feed rate. Retract is just like a jog rate. And departure is also just like a jog rate. So you'll set these up correctly. Down here under feed rate, you can use the rapid for the machine, but that indicates whatever the last person that used it set it as. I prefer to set mine, and so for the Haas, I would put in for the ShopBot, I might put 450, something like that, to let it go very quickly. Once you've set all these, we can then save this as a new tool, and here you'll see it added to our tool library. We hit OK, and now it has been added to my library down here. If I open it by clicking on it, I'll see all of those properties have remained in it, and so I can repeat this tool over and over. If I go and cut on the ShopBot and I find that I've set these rates too high, I may come back in here and tweak these so that I know every time I come back to the tool that it's set the way I want it for this particular material on this particular machine.